We are in a trust crisis. People don't trust anymore their brands. We could see it, and it's really me as an Ogilvy person telling you that's the conversation I have with any CMO today. The trust crisis. How can we get the consumers really like get into my brands, right? They need to re-engage the trust.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. I'm here today with a very special guest of mine. He's been an advertising expert over the last, don't want to give away his age, 20 plus years. I'm here with Pierre, who's with Ogilvy in Thailand or Southeast Asia.
Yes.
So maybe you could share a little bit about yourself, how you ended up in advertising. And then also I want to spend time today talking about your big adventure you did last year, which maybe we can go into more details after that.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure. You're right. I've been in advertising, marketing. So I would more say marketing than advertising for 20 years. I've been working in the biggest agency in the world. And I'm very lucky that I've been working in Ogilvy for 10 years now in Asia with a regional role. I'm actually the president of Ogilvy One, which is the entity that is basically looking after creating the best intimate relationship between customers and brand, leveraging technology and data. So a lot of my work is around data transformation, digital experience, customer experience, all of the things. Right?
And that's, you say regional role, so you're based now in Thailand.
I'm based in Thailand,
but you're covering, just so people know, Singapore,
APAC region.
APAC region. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And last year you did something very interesting where you actually took a year off from work in, you could say, in the office, so to speak, but maybe you're doing a different type of work, maybe on yourself and kind of increasing your different types of learnings, where you went from Bangkok to northern France, which I think you covered 38,000 miles or kilometers.
Absolutely.
And maybe you could give me a bit of a context as to why you did this, what was the purpose, and yeah, give me a little bit of context about why you went on this great adventure.
Well, I think, my role is to advise big customers and corporations in finding the path for growth. And I think that you can't only find the solution in a boardroom. You need to go on the field. You need to see what's really happened in the world. And also I was at half of my career, I would say, kind of 45 years old. And I thought I have two lovely boys that also I wanted to spend time with. So it's been about 7 years that together with my wife, we ever thought we should have some time to reconnect, refocus on the family, and basically do something quite adventurous.
Yeah, and also reconnect, but disconnect at the same time.
So
right?
Reconnect with the family,
yeah.
But in the meantime, start having a step back and thinking about all of what I've done already for the previous 20 years in my career, and meet different people to basically get enlightened and understand the world in a different way and understand what really means innovation. I've been working in innovation for 20 years. So what does that really mean?
Yeah.
And nothing is best than basically go on the road.
And then it's an interesting route. Obviously, you're based in Thailand, but what made you decide, and is there a specific name for that route of the drive? And where could you maybe give us a bit of an idea of where you went?
From a basic touristic kind of journey, we did the Silk Road, and we drove all the way on the Silk Road. From a more business point of view, I wanted to do something meaningful that I could also continue after my trip. And I realized that in innovation, what matters is how you create convergence across different territories, convergence across different sectors. And I realized that we need more convergence and maybe collaboration between countries, between different territories again, and domains. So I call this initiative Borderless Impact. Like, how do you create impact by being borderless? Very interestingly, when I decided to leave, that's just a few weeks before Trump was in his role of president of the United States. And you could see since then how much the world shut down. So we see more borders than ever in this world, unfortunately.
Yeah.
While technology allows you to basically break the borders. And I am a big believer that we need to use technology to crack the borders, to unlock new system, new innovation, new solution that will basically serve human by being borderless.
That's very interesting, because someone once told me that, and they were coming to work in Thailand from Canada. And then one of the questions I said to him, I said, well, you haven't lived in Thailand or you haven't lived in Southeast Asia. What makes you think you understand, marketing in this region, for example? And he said to me, marketing is a science. which kind of comes back to your thing where like there's these borders where, are you trying to say like it's borderless where something that works somewhere should technically work everywhere? Or yeah, what do you mean when you say it's borderless? What does borderless mean to you?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Marketing as a science is something that, by the way, that I say every day. And we need more marketing scientists, especially today, right? And this marketing scientist will be able to basically define the science behind marketing and eventually collaborate with the engineers. So it's the difference between a data scientist and a data engineers, if you mean. Now, I think that what has really been very insightful for me is we need to move to a business as an ecosystem, business as system. I think for many years, people have focused on business as a product. And I think the time has shifted. And you need to move to a business as a system. So what does it mean is that you are operating in an environment where there are different parties that you need to consider, and you need to understand the dependency of your business with those different parties in your ecosystem. And part of this ecosystem, you have different layers. The layers that you want to own, the layers that you want to partner, the layers that maybe you are dependent from. What I strongly believe is that you need to use technology to create the connection between this different environment, these different systems, or different part of that system. And the impact will always come out of this borderless kind of this connection you will make and how you crack that connection between the different parts of your system. Let me be a bit more clear. If you basically sell football clothes or like any kind of sport equipment for kids, you're not going to become like an entity that will maybe organize football championship for kids. However, you live in an ecosystem of sports, so you would need to interface and create partnerships with those clubs, with athletes, with different people who are part of your ecosystem. Yeah. Where technology has completely changed the way we could partner with these people and basically create and own a domain and own a system, because through different API, you can basically share a part of your product, a part of your service, and also get in return another type of service or product, eventually some data as well that would be valuable for your business. So you as a business owner can deliver a better customer experience.
Yes.
At the end for your customers without having to do everything.
Yeah. But also the technology, not just the borders, but like the barriers to entry become a lot smaller, right?
Well, I think, everyone has realized, especially for the last 4 months, how basically, knowledge is accessible to all.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. Literally yesterday, I was testing a new, I believe you heard of that, like a new agentic, new company startup. So basically this company helps you to run a startup, run a business entirely with an agent overnight and do everything for you on your behalf. Yeah. So you speak to your CEO is just like an agent that basically dictates everything that you will do with you.
Similar to OpenClaw.
No, much stronger. Like OpenClaw is an open source system that has blew up the sky for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So now you have company like NanoCorp that I encourage you to check, which basically help you to say, do you want to launch a business? You want to launch a business, you say yes. Do you have an ID? Yes or no. If you don't even have an ID, they will get you an ID just by scrolling your LinkedIn profile and understanding who you are. And then you say, okay, let's go with it. And then the agents by itself will go deep into what your business could look like, what's the value proposition, do the market research, start analyzing everything, coming up with a business model Canva, establishing this business model, turning it into a landing page, opening for you an email account, opening the Stripe account you need to basically process payment.
Yeah.
And basically, I woke up in the morning and I had everything. And I already had a CEO who was talking to me, advising me on a couple of things that basically we could, suggest to run the business.
It's funny you say that. I always say that in the future, like, I don't think entrepreneurship is going away, but I do feel that, people are going to you're going to have an entrepreneur and a CTO basically, are the two people running the company. The entrepreneur, the CEO, maybe leading the business, and then the CTO or the agent will be the one actually executing all the work. Because usually the CEO has all the ideas and they know what they want to do, but they don't really have the time or the bandwidth to be able to execute everything.
I don't have a crystal ball and I don't know. I think that a lot of people are a bit dreaming as well about, how fast it could happen. Yeah. Even if I am excited myself by the things, I'm testing it every single day. I think having worked on this AI topic for 10 years, there's lots of things that are going to take much more time to happen.
Yeah, it's funny you say 10 years because a lot of people think AI is only like a year old.
Well, I started to do a lot of personal research, and I was leading a think tank out of Singapore in 2017, and our work has been published in the first Singapore AI strategy in 2019. So it's before the first release of ChatGPT.
Wow.
And we were essentially working on different different part of AI, but especially the way it's going to disrupt our societal model and the workforce, and how basically it would affect the workforce and the way we would need to embrace this. Everything that basically we analyzed, everything that we were debating is happening today.
Yeah.
Even faster than what we thought.
Yeah, no, every week there's something new coming out and more advanced, and it's kind of everything. Yeah, every day there's something coming out that's kind of, they think, replacing something or enhancing something or.
Well, I think it's not about replacement.
Yeah.
I think it's about augmentation, and I think what the only recommendation I would make is like, we need to focus on what are our human strengths. We need to focus on our curiosity, our inspiration. We need to think about our intuition. We need to think about how much we are good in getting insights. And I think imagination is important, and something that where AI is definitely not there yet. Even if people say, yeah, but look how much it's crazy.
Creative,
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is really like the skills, what we would need. This is what I'm trying to encourage my two boys to do more, like how to be creative.
Yeah.
We're working on the soft skills that make us unique.
Yeah.
The people who look at the world from a different lens will be the people who will win at the end. If you just look at the world in a very structural way, based on
like
what
thinking outside the box, right?
Of course, because knowledge is accessible to everyone. And it's very weird because knowledge had a price for many years, and knowledge has not anymore a price because you get that knowledge now so accessible to everyone.
I think that you mentioned something about that previously where you said that necessity sparks ingenuity. Kind of like you're talking about founders and how out of necessity they're starting these businesses, right? And I do want to go back to your journey. We can talk about AI probably all day. You did mention you met more than 50 founders on your journey. How did you meet these founders, and what was some of the key takeaways you had from, I guess, these are from all lives of the world, right? And then also, you weren't just in Asia, you crossed Europe, Africa, Northern Asia, Middle East, all these places. What are some of the things that you found that people in different regions or different countries specifically looked at entrepreneurship and looked at startup ecosystems?
So I didn't know really much the kind of founders I could find and meet along my journey, and I had to test a bit. It's always testing and learning, and testing the people that would basically bring me the most. So I connected to the different ecosystem in every country I visited. And I was basically looking at who are the people who are really like leading the transformation of this country, having a voice, just because they are either like from a venture capital, or they are like a startup, or they are like doing something that really is meaningful. And very rapidly, I thought I should try to meet those people who are addressing a very specific problems in their country, and I want to understand how they succeeded in tackling this problem. My main learning is that the best innovation I've discovered, if I may, is an economic innovation. What I mean is that the people who really succeed are the people who basically combine a sense of purpose in their business because they are addressing a very specific human needs, increasing access to healthcare or food or education, which obviously is what you see, but combining this with a financial performance impact. And the people who will really combine both are the people who will succeed.
When you say financial impact, what does that mean?
I think that a lot of people in our world, which is good, have a purpose. And everyone wants to basically create a social impact company, right? And I've met a lot of them. I gave some workshops and courses in some hubs. I was working with Impact Hub at some point, and I met a lot of those lovely entrepreneurs, all with great ideas. Like, I want to make an impact. I want to save X amount of people. I want to just increase access to water and everything, right? But basically, purpose without performance is poetry.
Yeah.
And purpose with performance is real business.
Yes, because the reality is, even though you could be doing a great cause, helping all these people, if it doesn't make money.
Well, we are in a world dictated by finance.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the ultimate objective for any founders is if they want to tackle a real big problem that definitely is mindful, and purposeful, it's great. But then we need to say, like, how are you going to make the money?
Yeah.
And it's okay to discuss about money. Like, you can make money by also addressing a, very important social or environmental issues, right?
Yeah.
We should not be shy of this.
And do you think because you're traveling through, I guess, less developed areas, you could say, right, in general?
Yes.
Would you say that there was more startups in a social impact where kind of if you go to like the US or you go to kind of more developed markets, they're more enhancing the technology, right, versus kind of developing new technologies to increase, connectivity or to increase healthcare, stuff like that, because it's been done 10, 15 years ago. So a lot of the places you're going to, did you find they were behind like with the Western world or the markets? Or
I think the point is not so much to be behind or not. Like, do we have like big LLM players in Laos? No.
Yeah.
Do we have like people who are like as advanced as Chinese or American in AI in Kazakhstan or in Kyrgyzstan? No. However, I've met those people who basically understand all of this word and this technology and are turning it into action. So I've met one of the previous ministry of back in the day was the minister of digital affair for Kyrgyzstan. This guy is fantastic, and he left and he built this startup called My Data Coin, which is basically like a data marketplace to basically empower everyone in Kyrgyzstan with his own data in order to reinvent access to finance and access to healthcare. So in a sense, those people understand and are ahead of the curve and understand how technology evolves, and they are already bringing this technology to their countries in order to do something relevant.
Yes. And do you find, was there one particular country that you were surprised by the amount of, I guess, innovation and kind of technology on your journey?
Yes. I believe the best innovation comes from the most constrained countries, constrained environment. I don't know if you heard about innovation Jugaad.
No. Maybe.
So Jugaad is a very interesting concept from India. I have not traveled there, but Jugaad basically explain you, and there is a book and a whole theory on that, explain you that the more you constrain yourself, the more innovative you can be. And it became very true because when I arrived in Nepal, I've met in Nepal a lot of great entrepreneurs who succeeded in fintech, who succeeded in building any type of digital solution for small shops or for agriculture, for farmers, for any type of good solution. And I realized how much they were constrained. Constraints because they cannot get any money because VC don't want to invest in Nepal.
Yeah.
Constraints because basically they need to focus on a market that is, that's very poor. A country where basically there is not enough.
Yeah, you need the customers to be able to actually pay for the product as well,
yes,
right?
and then basically all of that constraints ends up by having just putting people in a such complicated environment. The humans are amazing at coming up with ideas that can tackle those challenges even in the more constrained environment.
Yeah.
And certainly Nepal really, blew my mind.
So sometimes having too many options limits your creativity because there's so many different options you have where when you're limited, it really forces you, like you're telling your sons, to kind of like look outside from the different angles and kind of really think outside the box.
Same for Laos, where I was very surprised that I could find. I even didn't know I could find entrepreneurs or good startup tech people in those countries, and I've met certainly the most amazing one in Laos. In Cambodia. In Cambodia, I've met a guy who created like a laptop, to compete with Mac and Chromebook and so on, because it realized that basically it was not fair that these laptops are way too expensive and he had to do something open source that he could give to any school.
Yeah.
And he was able to produce laptop and compete, I would say, partially compete, but come up with something which would be half the price. And this guy is just left school when he was 18. He was explaining me a Riti tool, an amazing person. He lived for 2 years in a monastery, reading books, trying to understand the world differently before coming up with a solution that could really address Cambodian needs.
Yeah.
And yes, and he's succeeding now, and he's one of the most inspiring person in Cambodia.
I think actually China did a really good job of that with the smartphone, where smartphones used to be $1,000 for iPhones, and then or even a Samsung, and then they were coming out with phones that were $200-$300. Where reality is they're more or less the same they're the same hardware, but for a fraction of the price. So they're giving accessibility to smartphones. These smartphones are used all over third world countries, right?
And you see how they do it today is that they're empowering everyone to basically do a company of one because of this agentic world, which is good. And I don't know if you read the news the last 2 weeks and how many of those Chinese now rush to basically buy a Mac Mini to get their agents, their lobsters, running all the night. They all basically have the ability to connect OpenCloud to WeChat. This connection will be amazing in terms of how it's going to really help getting into this agentic world. And China is going to basically support anyone who wants to have his, company of one. Now, the only, I would say not caveat, but the only thing that I feel is a bit weird in this is it goes very fast and we will end up having all people working all independently and talking with their lobster and their agent.
Not interacting.
And we are social anymore.
Yeah,
people need to socialize. People need to come together.
Yeah. It's funny to say that the one person company idea is because you need to sell something. You can build the best product or tool in the world, but if you don't know how to get in front of the right people, then how do you...
I feel people are made to socialize.
Yeah.
And I think this is something the Japanese have learned very well because the Japanese know it's part of their aging mantras. Like if you want to get a better, healthy aging, one pillar of this is you need to be in a social community. And by the way, I've realized as well along my trip how communities are so important. Yeah. The next business will need to be community driven. And this is something that we don't see so much in mature, Western worlds and environment.
When you say community driven, is that, that's very interesting actually, because you do see a lot of new companies now, whether it's a run club or they're trying to build more engagement or social activities around their business. Is it because you find that community creates more loyalty, where in a world where, maybe loyalty, people are kind of stagnant, where they'll transit, where they'll jump from one to another, and that sense of community creates a stickiness to a product or a business?
I think that communities is where trust is happening. We are in a trust crisis. People don't trust anymore.
AI
brands.
also.
And that doesn't help, right? So people don't trust anymore their brands. We could see it, and it's really me as an Ogilvy person telling you that's the conversation I have with any CMO today, the trust crisis. How can we get the consumers really get into my brands, right? They need to re-engage the trust, and community helps to build trust. Now, when you are in Cambodia or Laos, and you are a farmer, the moment to basically get access, I'll give you a real example. You basically need to get access to water for your fields, your rice fields. At the moment, you're dependent from a machine that works with petrol that will basically extract from the river the water that you can put in your rice field.
Yeah.
Right. Then it will depend on how high is the water in the river, and it will depend, and sometimes because of the dryness, you won't get access to the water the way you want. And you are, very alone, and you are dependent from the petrol price and everything. I met some interesting people, Sogo Energy, who decided to basically create artificial lakes in the middle of multiple fields to basically control the way they could give access to water to many farmers in a consistent way. So they started to build those artificial lake, and then they started to use solar energy to extract the water on a daily basis from these kind of artificial lakes and basically irrigate all the fields. Okay? The way they build this business, how do you want to build such a business? If you don't have a community already willing to participate, you can't. You're not going to create a lake for a one person. So they basically embrace a community mindset and say, we would basically need to be the partner of this community of, they said, 175 farmers they contracted with.
Yeah.
Then if you basically go to these 175 farmers just to say, I'm going to give you access to water, it's not going to work. The way it's going to work is you are going to partner with them for harvesting, controlling the way they do their business, eventually helping them to invest in some ways, managing the way they will, have to pay for this access to water. Okay.
So helping with their
it becomes a
workflow.
community-driven business. It's not anymore like a give you access to water. It becomes I'm becoming a farmer partner, and I basically do everything. So water is my new oil, and solar energy will be helping to extract the water. But you will pay me for the energy that I need for all my infrastructure when you will have harvested. Then you can change the game, because the farmer can harvest the rice, make the money, manage his cash flow, and pay back the company.
Yeah.
These people are now reinventing the way you access to water, but basically control that you can have water every day, every year at the same time. That means you have better harvest. That means that the yield is better.
Yeah.
That means that people make more money.
So you're starting a business not just with one customer, but you're going in with a whole ecosystem of.
And you need to embrace this community, and having people who are the ambassadors of those communities on the field, who can basically be advocating your business to communities, especially in some countries where the language is so important.
Yeah. And it's it is funny you talk about farming. For example, I read something today about a company I think just got valued at $2 billion from New Zealand, for example. And cow dairy is a huge industry in New Zealand, right? And one of the pain points for a lot of these farmers, you have these huge farms, and they have the fences, and they have to move the cattle from different fields because they need the grass to grow. They need to make sure they have enough XYZ to let it survive, and then when they're ready to be milked, all these kind of processes. They've now created a software where they have a kind of like a necklace on all the cows, and it's a virtual fence, so they can move this is a farmer. Now he's sitting in his living room in New Zealand on his 100-acre farm, now moving the fence on his iPhone to herd his cows to different areas.
Well,
which I thought which is amazing innovation, right?
It's interesting you mentioned about buffalo, because I never was interested at all in buffalo and all the related business we could get with buffalo.
Yeah.
But I met some people who basically were completely disrupting as well the buffalo industry in Laos. And you know how? They basically, people who have buffalo in Laos, it's because they don't have the truck, and they basically need still the buffalo for the rice field.
It's the AI agent.
So they grow the buffalo, and basically 30%, I didn't know that. I could not imagine that 30% of their buffalo, when they give birth, you lose about 30% of animals because of disease and kind of stuff. Because it's the farmers, they don't know how to handle when the buffalo gives birth and everything. So a company came, and I've met those guys, and they said okay, we will pay the farmers when a buffalo is pregnant to basically take this buffalo with us for 6 months and be sure that the buffalo is going to give birth in a proper and good and a healthy condition. So the farmers don't lose any money. The farmers get money. Okay. Now, by having the buffalo in their farm, they were able to do a few things. First, to give birth, to ensure that the birth will happen in a very healthy environment.
Sanitized environment, yeah.
But then starting to think that we could maybe do some milk from buffalo, which I didn't know could happen. And basically you could do lactose-free milk, which is super important for certain people allergic to milk,
yes.
And lactose. So they started to do another business related to this first pain point. And then they realized, by meeting a company from Australia or New Zealand as well, that, okay, but they have those buffalo, and how could they help those buffalo to basically reduce methane emission, which is a big problem from an environmental point of view, is all the methane emission. And they contracted with a company in Australia and New Zealand to give and feed the buffalo with a certain kind of chemical product that basically help reduce the methane emission.
Yeah.
So you reinvent the entire cycle. And then back to what I said, it's a converse, it's how you basically operate in a system rather than basically operating just to build a product.
Yeah.
And you transform the entire value chain of a proper system.
So you might come in
and
with
solve different problem.
One problem, but then you understand there's a whole
Absolutely
circle around that problem.
So you finally empower the farmers, get him a better money, ensure that finally there are 30% less buffalo dying, and they could give birth good condition. You basically create a product out of that never existed before, and that has a lot of value, especially for people who basically cannot are allergic to lactose.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you think, okay, but I have here a new asset. I'm playing with those buffalo. How can I play my role in protecting somehow the planet and reducing a methane emission?
Yeah, it's like a full service system.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I guess going back to your journey through the region, was there one particular region or one particular founder or entrepreneur that really stood out to you along your journey?
Yes, I think one of the guy who really blew my mind is the founder of Sulio, the founder of Loka in Laos. So Loka is a company, is the equivalent of Uber or Grab in Laos. And the guy is an ex-digital marketing expert. And so I think first we had a good connection because we were talking the same language. Then he explained me, basically built this app. And rapidly it became a nightmare because who were the people who were basically using his app at that time in 2019 or 2018? It's mainly the tourists in English.
Because they understand what, when they arrive, what's the local.
Now he
Uber,
realized that COVID hit. And then basically what you have to do when you don't have any more tourists and your app is running and it's all in English and everything.
Yeah.
So first the guy blew me by having so much resilience and focus, a very, very important focus marketing-wise on the right audience. How to ensure I can really... And he realized that basically by only focusing on a certain part of his customers, he could really completely change the business. And he realized that a lot of Laotian family, a bit more wealthy family, would basically like to empower their children when they get out for party with this kind of service. And in the meantime, they were marketing to these students and stuff that they could get their independence by using the app. And he only focused on one small segment of his audience at that time to basically try to get back the business.
Yeah.
Okay, and bounce back. And he did it. Now, what also blew me, really blew my mind when I spoke to this guy, beyond the fact he has been resilient, beyond the fact that he was really bringing me super smart ideas on how he was marketing, from a marketing point of view, running his business, I realized these guys was now driving the entire electric vehicle penetration in Laos through the app and through the service he built. Because he realized before anyone else that he would have to empower the drivers with electrical vehicle. And then he will basically, said to them that he will help them to basically,
finance the
car and everything. But then he realized that none of them wanted to do this. And he only had 3 of them who subscribed to his offer. And he said, why that? Because, of course, there is no charger anywhere in Laos so that people could charge their cars. So he just said, okay, I need to be the person who basically, if I want to penetrate more electrical vehicle in Laos, I need to basically be the person who implement and set up all the electrical charger.
Yeah. So again, you're building the full ecosystem.
And again, you come to an ecosystem from a one service. It started to entirely transform and disrupt the chain. Then he had to go, and he realized that, again, the reason he wanted to do it is because he wanted to empower his main audience and the people who were driving his car. So and the focus of this person, getting back to being obsessed about how can I ensure that the people who drive the cars have a better life? How can I ensure they have a better access to, a cost of energy that is divided by 2? Yeah. If I help them to shift to electrical vehicle, I will help them not to put that money into oil and petrol.
Yeah, right now they'd be very happy.
Of course.
Yeah.
And basically, what I like, again, is how much he was focusing on sticking to his first concept of, what can I do for the drivers to empower them to get a better life. Remember what we said at the very beginning. It's like, how do you measure performance and why it matters to look at the financial. I asked this guy, how do you measure your impact? He just showed me basically his phone, and he said, any driver from my app, they know the savings are generated for them. So you are a driver.
So showing the savings to the driver.
So financially showing, and it's very interesting from a behavior science point of view, you show to someone how much you helped him to save money. So it's basically maybe like, I made you save 5,000 over the last 3 months. Where do you think this money go? So the guy was proud of telling me that is the impact he's generating, because he has given back a 3,000 USD to a founder who can now better fund education or access to healthcare for his family.
Because it all drips down, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the social impact.
And I think this is what I was teaching some students and social enterprise CEO in some markets is, think about how you make an impact from a financial point of view And it's okay. Let's not
Yeah.
be scared of talking about money. But if you show to someone that you have made him save $3,000 or $4,000, you are basically empowering that person with that amount.
Yeah.
And that's how you can basically increase access to healthcare, education, and all the things that we need. So learning from this conversation with Loka, the focusing on a one objective is how to empower the driver to get a better life.
Yeah.
From there, thinking about all the different way you can unlock that, you can get to this objective, really succeed.
Do you think that, going back to the marketing as a science aspect, do you think this learning, which from Laos, do you think that applies to like the first world countries like US or Europe? Or do you think it's more so prevalent in places like Laos, third world countries, developing, emerging markets?
Everything I just described, and that's what I liked with this journey, is everything I described is highly applicable to any businesses and the way we run businesses today. I'll give you another example. I've met in Nepal a company called Alloy, who basically are offering microcredits to people who are like never get them any money from the bank, by basically unlocking some tokens for those people that they can only use, basically using the loan in certain environment for certain products, right? So you unlocked some money for someone who is in the needs of getting more cash to run his business, his farm, or anything. But you will tell him that money is not just to buy an iPhone or to buy a bag or to just go and buy a motorbike. It's basically needs to be related to your business. Buy seeds, buy a machine, buy anything that will help you grow your business. Then ultimately you start controlling how these people will use the money in a more beneficial way. So I was very interested with their model. They basically start to become an intermediary between the banks, between the distributors, who basically need more farmers to basically buy their product, the seeds producers, and they started to even get access to a lot of data because they can control how the farmers pay back their loan.
Yeah.
So by having access to the data, they can also monetize a lot of other things, how to better deal with the seeds producers and any people from this ecosystem, selling them back like some value and intelligence. That kind of thinking, that kind of system thinking needs to be applied to everything. How do you empower your people, your customers? How do you come up with new additional revenue ideas in your business by breaking the borders?
Yeah, and actually it's like following the whole journey. You're not just kind of addressing this one problem here, because it's like the tip of an iceberg, right? Usually if there's a problem here, there's a big problem below it. So if you can actually solve the bigger problem below it, you're gonna solve the whole ecosystem.
Yes, no, you're right, and I think that is already giving me lots of ideas every single day on how we should change some of the way we think, change the way we design customer experience. People are too narrow and sometimes only think that we need to replicate what works. At the moment, I see something quite phenomenal in terms of disruption is how big, how much we have, how many creators we have every single day. We are in a podcast studio today doing more content, right?
Yeah.
And I'm basically think that there is a huge opportunity for brands to embrace this creator economy in a very meaningful way and turning that content into a currency. The more your ambassadors and your creators will basically post about the brand, the more it's going to basically generate value for your brand, and it should generate value for the creators. And I'm working on a lot of dedicated loyalty programs for creators at the moment for big corporation. Yeah, that's exactly something similar as what I explained before.
And that's kind of where building more of a relationship between brand and creator versus a brand paying a creator for one post or one review, one reel, like kind of more of a long-term creator relationship.
What you just said is music to my ears because I wanted to hand up here. There is no way you can grow a business without thinking about the relationship you would create between your customers and your brand. And this is what we claim every day, to our client. And this relationship needs to be around trust. This is how you create trust. This relationship basically needs to be very personalized, very intimate. And the more we will get into a world that is where skepticism is everywhere, where trust is important, creating those intimate relationship will become essential. And what you can do now is by using data and technology, you could create very personalized relationship. It become obvious, and it should become the primary objective of anyone, any marketers.
Do you think that having like brands, say for if you're a new business and you're launching a product, it's difficult to kind of get away from, like this, you talk about community, brand, and trust, for example. That's something I always think is very important, especially when I'm buying products. Then you have like, Shopee, Lazada, for example, where the marketplaces, not just them, that offer, all these brands, all these different products. How do you think that they are able to create that trust when they don't actually own the brand and they're more of just a marketplace? Because the marketplace...
Through the relationship. If you're only selling a product, you will always, and if you don't think about your ecosystem, that means that you will always be dependent of someone who owns the ecosystem. So I think first, you can sell a product, but you need to own a domain. You need to own a territory that is yours. That doesn't mean that you need to produce everything that is within this ecosystem. But it means that you need to own that ecosystem, and you need to be the key person, the key brand that people want to come to when it comes to sport, when it comes to women's health, when it comes to farming management or anything.
Yeah.
And if you basically are selling a software, like farm software, for instance, because you are in this farming management kind of territory, you can think about a lot of other things that people and the farmers would need somehow. Do you need to produce it yourself? No. Do you need to partner with some people to pull this for your customers because you bring a certain value to your customers and strengthen the relationship you have with those customers? Yes. So I think this becomes super important. So how do you basically shift from product to system? And that's something that I really have seen all the way, along my journey. And how you basically need to more focus on creating this personal relationship and make this relationship very intimate and not only financial, not only transactional. Too many brands think that basically by rewarding you and giving you back a vouchers of $2, they will create something with you. That's not what will basically help you love the brand. In Ogilvy, we like to say we talk about brand devotion.
Yeah, it might make you buy it that one time. It's because
why do you have a Nike? Why do you have this brand? Because you love the brand, because you are devoted to this brand.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think the ultimate marketing objective is make those customers, loyal customers, be as devoted as possible to brands.
It's funny you mentioned Nike, and I don't know why, but the only running shoes or gym shoes that I bought for the last 20 years are Nike.
Because Nike is the company that has understood before many others how important it is to create relationship.
Yeah.
How it is important to anchor their marketing on cultural neurons. How it is important to inspire you. Nike doesn't sell you shoes. Nike sell you a sport, ambition, vision, a mindset.
And you feel good when you put on your Nike shoes, you go for a run. It's
I encourage everyone to always watch what Steve Jobs was saying about Apple. When he cracked Apple, they didn't want to come up with another laptop that would basically compete with the GPU or their speed or blah, blah, blah. He said, no, we need a computer that will basically change people's life. We need to think about what drives people, what do people want to say, and that's how Apple Think Different is born.
And the connectivity part of Apple is absolutely amazing, where your phone, your iPad.
But that's the functionality.
Yeah.
What the promise, Apple Think Different, okay? Nike, just do it.
Yeah.
That doesn't tell you Nike just good shoes. It tells you just do it. It's the culture of doing. It's basically help you to achieve something that matters for you in your life.
Yeah.
Then of course they have good product. Of course they have anything that needs to go with it.
But it's amazing. It'd be how this. It's subconsciously I've done this my whole life, and then I would never think to go to Adidas, for example. Adidas has a great products, great brand, but just because I've been not programmed, but my whole life I've gone here, and I'm part of that. You could call a community almost, right? Of a diehard fan, and I'm a loyal customer.
Yeah, I'm not neither a Nike or Adidas person. I think I love both. I had both.
Yeah.
I'm just inspired by how some of those brands never gave up on building their brands.
Yeah.
And I think that so many people, especially in this digital age, especially for the last 10, 15 years, think that just having the right technology in place, just playing with, be always like the most innovative company in terms of interaction. They think it's going to help you build, help build
Yeah.
brands. It doesn't work like this.
It's funny you say that though. So going back to just my personal experience, recently I've started to look at On, because people I hear or like On, it's better for running. The technology of the shoe, it's better. So I've been swayed because I've been hearing this, and I keep reiterating, I keep seeing it, and I see people using it, and it makes me kind of question, oh, maybe I should try this one, because it's, there's noise around it, right? It just shows you again, like customer behavior. We're very affected by like what we consume, right?
Well, yes, of course, we are very affected by, but we are, something that I like to remember as well is how important behavior science is to marketing. Our brain has not changed for hundreds of thousands of years, okay? We are apes,
Yeah.
like we were, okay? And yes, we have phones which potentially are destroying a bit of our brain. It has been proven, and we have like all this technology that is super, making our life very practical in some ways. But the way we take decision remain the same, and we are driven by our emotion.
Yeah.
That's how it works. That's how our brain works.
Do you think that's the difference between humans and AIs? We're emotional beings.
Well, I think AI has absolutely not simulated our human cognition.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe it will, because behavior science is as a real science. Understanding the nudges, like what drives you into a certain decision, is something that has been highly theoretized, highly understood, and obviously that could shift to training the AI to understand the nudges and certainly it's already happening. Like nudging people to do certain things. This is certainly the most dangerous part. When you start training an AI to understand how your brain works in terms of decision-making process.
Yeah.
And this is, even like when you look at how people are now addicted to social media, it basically what Meta and others have done very well. And remember, like what we had initially, it was a social network.
Yes,
is it
marketing.
a social network? Is now just like a platform where people are independently, very lonely, scrolling down, content around cats and dogs and stuff.
Death scroll.
So
you see kids just.
Of course.
Yeah.
And if you want to get to that level of addiction and everything, it means that we basically train the engine to nudge us in a way that we basically go into it.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but you talk about addiction and human behavior, right? Where you look at, and no discredit to them, like Temu, for example, why they've become so popular. I was reading a case study on them, is because they gamified shopping. So the human behavior, like, you can spin a wheel to get like 20, 30% off. You can, play these different games so no longer you're shopping for the purpose of shopping. You're shopping because you're playing a game and you want to get more of a discount on something that maybe you need, maybe you don't need. But it's that addictive, I guess, pattern in our brain, right?
There are different ways in behavior science to nudge people and individual, and everyone will be nudged in a different way.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a very, one example that I always bring up that I like very much is we rely a lot as human on the social norms. So if you go to a hotel, certainly it happened to you that you have a small board in the bathroom telling you that you can't, if you want, you no need to basically leave the towel for washing every day. It's going to protect the planet.
Yes.
So there are two ways of addressing this message to people. Either you could just say, well, we encourage you not to leave your towel every day to protect the planet. Or you could do it the other way around and say like 95% of people who basically have spent a night in this room decided not to leave the towel every day to protect the planet.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you.
Do you want to be one of them?
That you want to be the like the 95% of people. So
that's
what we call the social norm. So you could see how we use social norm, turning it into a marketing message at the end to basically influence you. And there are many of those nudges: the loss of aversion, the framing, based on the different marketing messages that you need to deliver. You need to understand who are the consumers and how you will nudge them properly.
Yeah.
Right. There are some topics where you would need to, in order to convince people to take action, you would need to frame very well what's going to happen to them if they don't take action.
Yeah.
Right. If I want you to get vaccinated, and if I don't show you the risk of the disease, there might not be, you may say, okay, I will just push it to later.
Yeah, or if you say 95% of the population is now vaccinated. Or, for example, you want to be part of that.
And again, because people need to picture the risk. So if I tell you today that you need to get vaccinated for COVID, you've lived COVID, you know what it is, you know how dangerous it is, and you know, okay. If I tell you tomorrow that you need to get vaccinated for the smallpox, or, you know, like a disease that certainly has almost disappeared, but maybe there is an outbreak. You even don't know what it looks like. You don't know that it could be like terrible, with like lots of spots on your face and everything. Like I'm not talking about chicken pox, like, you know, a very older disease. If you don't picture it, people don't feel, you know, when people don't picture it, then you cannot picture the danger.
Yeah. It's amazing you talk about seeing the danger, and that's why on cigarettes, they try to, you know, deter people from smoking them, but by having those, you know, images of the lung or the
of course,
like, but it doesn't do. But then there's still people. I wonder what the percent is of people that actually are deterred from that versus the people that just ignore.
I don't know,
but it'd be an interesting stat to know.
I don't know. It would be, and but it certainly works because it's so, you know, this smoking business is all about behavior science.
Yeah.
And so I was working in healthcare a lot, and we've used a lot of behavior science techniques to basically nudge individual to basically change their health behaviors. And I wish that we could basically help people change their social addiction behaviors by using the same techniques. Again, our brain has not changed. It's the same for 2,000 years or more.
Yeah, so just very of time, I did want to ask you, because you mentioned you reconnected with your family and you disconnected from, you know, the internet or from technology on your journey. What's one of the key takeaways you gathered from spending a lot of time, I guess, with people, and then also kind of disconnecting from, you know, your general day-to-day life of, like, you know, being in a corporate environment?
First, I you know, the main learning is, when you want to do something, I would encourage everyone to just put as much grain into it to just do it. You know, I think not enough people just are brave of doing the things that they dream of. We turn our dream into memories. Yeah. And that is phenomenal, right? And when you have achieved something, which has, by the way, been tough somehow, you know, when we had to go through high plateau in Tibet, slept at almost 6,000 meters high, getting through the headache, getting through like terrible roads. It was not easy every day, but then you get a sense of achievement that is even bigger and powerful. You feel very fulfilled in a way. So personally, it created bonds with the family that now I would never imagine.
You probably know your kids better now.
I know my kids much better. And they know their dad much better. It created like moments that now we have in the family that we never had before. We take more time for the lunch or the breakfast than before. We go to the restaurants once a week, and instead of just running and go for beers with friends, we basically spend the time together because we need it.
Yeah. Would you say you appreciate each other more?
We appreciate each other much more. We are sharing much more. So that's about the family. And again, but we wanted it and we had to go through it. You know, living in a 4-meter square during 330 days is not easy, right? And I was living in a bigger house before, and you know, it's not easy. So, but because we got out of our comfort zone as well, so it reinforced all the learnings. Now, very interestingly, along this journey, I was very, very often questioning myself about, does it really change myself? Do I feel a change? I could not feel anything, of course, because change is happening over time, over a month. The moment I realized the change is when I came back. I realized that basically people are not listening to each other. I realized I was much more listening to people. I realized how much people are, you know, basically shifting their mind too rapidly without having any focus. I realized my change when basically I was back in the same kind of situation professionally with the same people in the same office, but the way I was approaching the business, my week, my connection to clients and to people was entirely different. Yeah. And that's how I realized that certainly going through all of this journey and that disconnection, living in the present, not anymore in the future, getting the time to really like think, has impacted entirely my life for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because not just now, but as we've spoken in the past, I always notice something about you're very engaged when you have a conversation with anybody. So you kind of give, when you're talking to someone, you give them your full attention, where, a lot of times you talk to people that are kind of here, there, they're kind of all over the place, right?
People don't listen. People just talk about, the last kind of things that they come to their mind. But people have no, they don't take a step back. And I think the more we get into a society where we will be bombarded by shit delivered by all those agents we will have to live with. And it's okay. And I'm very excited. I'm the first one testing all of those things and pushing my client to do it. But we need to adapt as well and see where is the value. How do we sustain how do we stay human and basically keep these human strengths that make us so unique? And how do we need to evolve from a management point of view? How do we need to evolve in the business of every day? How do we need to change what we sell? How we partner with our clients and everything. It's all of this is connected. And people are shifting too much.
Yeah, and I think it's about taking, just speaking to you, I've learned a lot about, human behavior. It's about taking lessons you learn from people and then applying them, not just taking something from today and then, oh, that was great, and then going back to the way I was doing things before. I should take things in and actually implement them into your business, into your life, and that's the way how people are going to progress and improve.
A very simple thing is, I think people are always stressed with everything. People think that every small problem in their life becomes like a nightmare. And I've been living in marketing agencies for now 20 years, and I know that especially in marketing agency, advertising agency, like client wants something, it becomes like the mess. And then because I learned that for every problem there is a solution.
Yeah.
Every problem there is a solution, right? It's just you need to make a pause, understand what are the sub-problems, understand in order to solve that problem, what's the steps towards the solution. There are always solutions.
Yeah.
So this is a fantastic learning in terms of day-to-day management of my business, my life, my relationship with others, the business I run.
And I guess just kind of I'm just being aware of time. One last question for you would be, is it something you'd like to do again? Do you have plans to do some, take a year off and explore? If so, where would you go? And then what's the one key takeaway you'd give to people that kind of you learned from your year away?
So if I would like to do it again, maybe not now. I think we are now with my wife and family. I just want the kids to grow and get to the bachelor and just, work. And I also want, I didn't want to do it more.
Yeah.
A lot of people were asking, are you going to stay for, do this for 1 or 2 or 3 years? No, very rapidly I realized it had to get to an end. I was super happy to get back to work. I'm super happy now that I'm back into my role to do. I'm not, in a regret mode or thinking, I need to go back. No, not at all. The biggest learning is that when you want to create a business, from a business point of view, when you want to create a business, the focus is super important. But I think that people will need to embrace volatility when they build a new business. They need to think about how the world is changing very fast, and they need to be flexible enough and agile enough in what they build in order to embrace this volatility, because the people who will embrace it will be people who will adapt soon and faster than others, and people will win ultimately. And from a very personal point, learning, I've been impressed by how beautiful is the world. I was lucky to sleep in places where you don't have any connection, where you don't have any pollution, where it means any sound pollution, any light pollution, where I've seen the sky like I've never seen before. And I think that we need to be a bit more optimistic about, all of that. I know that there are lots of problems with the climate warming and everything, but there are still like places on Earth that are untouched and absolutely beautiful. And I think we need to make people realize that, so that they could, by realizing how beautiful is the world, they can, be willing to protect more the world. And that's maybe the one thing that I wish I will do again, is I'm not sure I will do again a 1-year trip or these things, but I know that I will go back to those places untouched. And I will do everything I can to go back to those places, even if it's very complicated to access. It is. Yeah. Because I know how beautiful it is, and I know how much it touched me, and I know how I got energy from this moment.
It's taken your, the way you look at things, probably again, talking about outside the box, you probably now think more outside the box, and it kind of gives you a completely different perspective on the world and the way things are
If
operating.
I wish to go back to some of those places or different places, but untouched, very inaccessible every year,
Yeah.
for a week, I'll do it, because I think that is complete. That has changed my energy, my life, my entire own ecosystem.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for another couple hours, but I just want to say, we have to wrap it up now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
I
you
really
so much,
appreciate
Charlie.
it. You've definitely given me a lot to think about, and a lot of what you've said has resonated with me. And now I'm going to go back to my office and I'm going to try to implement some of those things.
No, it's a pleasure. I want to share more about these learnings. I want to, I could have spoken about this journey with you for 4, 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
Have so much to say in terms of fun stories and stuff. And I wish I could basically
Yeah, we might have to do it
tell
again.
my story more to people, because I wish that I can inspire people, and I wish that people can get the learnings, and apply those learnings to their daily life and business.
Yeah. Well, no, definitely I felt some impact myself. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie.
Okay,
Thanks
amazing.
for having me.